You've just rolled up to In the Mind of Reelz, where the whiskey's strong, the opinions are stronger, and there's no filter in sight. We're talking no holds barred, people. I am Reelz, Marine, biker, musician, and unapologetic patriot. I love my country and all things fast, loud, and wild. And if you came here looking for a smooth ride, well, you're in the wrong motherfucking place. Buckle up. Let's get it done. It's time to dive into the chaos that's inside my mind. So, episode 11, thank y'all for tuning in. I've been having a good time so far, sharing stories with you and sharing my thoughts. I know some people don't always agree with me, and that's quite all right. But I'm just doing my thing, So I actually want to share an experience that I recently had in the last few months. And initially, I wasn't going to even talk about it. Because it's so out there, and I'm still trying to figure out what the fuck it was, okay? Here's the scenario, okay? Like everybody, I have a morning routine, right? I have a morning routine, you get up, in my case, I got up in the morning, it was a random Tuesday. The first thing I do, I feed my dogs, get all my animals situated. Turn on the news, I have my routine, have my coffee, and just get my day rolling, right? So I turn on the shower, I'm getting it ready, jump in the shower, do my thing, get out of the shower, and I'm, in the mirror, fixing the beard and brushing my teeth and all this stuff. And there comes a point as I'm doing this that I feel like a sudden shift of awareness, right? I can't explain it. So with this shift, it's like I'm looking in the mirror and I feel something over my shoulder, right? But like I'm looking in the mirror and I could see another me looking in the mirror with me, right? I'm very aware. And for the record, it was in the morning. No booze was involved. I hadn't been drinking. I hadn't been smoking. None of that happened the night before. So in the morning, I'm very clear-headed. So I'm looking in the mirror and I see myself looking at myself. But the thing is, I'm not level with me. It's almost like I'm standing on something. So I'm looking in the mirror from behind me, but I'm kind of looking down at me from a side angle. And I'm just in the mirror playing with my beard, right? And I see myself. And I'm not fearful, right? This probably went on for about 30 seconds. But it was almost like it was slow motion, I can't explain it. I mean, I know it sounds so fucking crazy. I know. I'm not a religious person. So, I don't know what it was. All I know is that time goes by, right? And it's almost like I snap back into, reality. And I'm looking in the mirror and I'm still fucking with my beard. But when I pop out of it, right? So when I come back to, I'm I have to stop and take a minute. I'm looking in the mirror. I'm what the fuck just happened? I was very aware something happened and that it was not normal, right? It literally gave me goosebumps, even now talking about it. It was such a weird experience, but I wasn't scared. But I gotta tell you, after that happened, I can't shake the memory. I can't shake it. I think about that memory almost daily since it happened, which was about, 3 months ago, or something like that. And, it sounds fucking crazy, right? So I'm just trying to figure out what that was all about. So, like anything, I go back through my day, and I just remember I'm on the road visiting customers, and that morning I'm still thinking about, I thought about that shit all fucking day, right? And I didn't tell anybody because I was just, it sounds so fucking like that's something that happens when you're just like you're drunk or something and you're just not thinking straight. But I was so level-headed, like it was just an unusual thing to happen. So it really did something to me that I can't shake it. It's like it's making me think about, other possibilities, right? Because like I said, I've never been a religious person. Even growing up as a kid, like, I had friends and family who would go to church and stuff like that. And I would go on occasion, but it never stuck, right? Like some people go to church and it just sticks and they get it and they understand like this is their thing, but it just never really stuck with me. So after this scenario happened, I'm thinking about a lot of shit. I've spoken about as I get older, I think about, dying and not to be like somber and shit like that. I'm just saying like reality is it's inevitable. We all are going to kick the bucket at some point in life. So I understood that very early on in life. But as I get older, I still think about all this other shit. And so when that happened, I was like, fuck, man, there's got to be something more. There's got to be, man. Like I definitely believe in spirits. I know I touched this topic briefly with my guest from last episode, Damien. But, it's just that experience really got me thinking about stuff. Now, I love learning stuff. I'm very into history and learning about shit, especially things that are interesting to me. I've always thought the afterlife and what happens after you die. Like I've always been fascinated by that stuff. So with this little experience I had, it's only like heightened and left me with more questions, man. Honestly, it's left me with more questions and stuff I just don't understand or have figured out yet, right? So it's just, I realize the clock is ticking. The clock is fucking ticking. And so I believe that there is a form of reincarnation. I believe that when you die, you do have a choice to possibly go back and live again in a different body. You start as a child and grow. I feel like this reincarnation thing is a very real thing, and I believe that the spirits that we have, everyone has a spirit. That's obvious. I believe the spirit is always learning. You ever hear that saying, things happen for reasons, right? And I've used that saying a lot, and I honestly feel like things do happen for reasons, right? That's why you can't always control shit, right? Like people want to try to control every aspect of their life, and then sometimes they get fucking real bold and want to try to control other people's aspects of life, right? And the thing that always happens is you can't control it. So even your own scenario, you can make your own choices, but you can't control things that are just meant to happen sometimes, right? And that's where the lessons learned come in. And so I believe reincarnation, I'm starting to believe that's more of a real thing these days. If there is such a thing, then it leaves me with more questions. It's all very weird. I mean, the afterlife, heaven, hell, nothingness, something wild. What happens when you kick the bucket? That's something that I've always been fascinated with, and you can't really know because you're dead. When you die, that's it. So with that experience happening, it's left me wanting to know more. And I want to educate myself. I find myself absorbing information on this shit. If I read an article or watch a movie or a video or something, a documentary or something, like I just will like sit and watch it uninterrupted because that stuff interests me. I want to know more, right? And if there is such a thing, as an afterlife. Hopefully I'm going to the right motherfucking place. So, and I think this intensifies even more now that Pope Francis just died. You know, like, again, I want to throw this out there. I'm not a religious scholar, okay? I don't claim to know everything, especially when it comes to religion. But with Pope Francis dying, and not only did he die, but he died on Easter Monday, which kind of a coincidence. Now, I know he was a Catholic, and, you know, there's Catholic and Christians, and they, you know, there's different beliefs there, but they all kind of combined. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Because right now I want to talk about the Pope passing. I want to get it off my brain right now so I don't forget. Him dying on Easter Monday is kind of weird. I mean, it's not normal, right? I mean, especially when, you know, that's the time where Jesus rises, right? So kind of weird that he died on Easter Monday. But okay, so that happens, and it immediately made me think about some stories that I've had heard over the years. Okay, again, not a religious scholar, but I've heard some things in my lifetime. One of which, there's this prophecy, right, that was created by a 12th century archbishop. I believe his name was Saint Malachi, right? This guy, like I said, was a Catholic priest, and he created these 112 prophecies, if you will, and kind of put it into a book called the Prophecy of the Popes, right? So anyways, this Saint Malachi creates these 112 kind of prophecies, if you will. I don't know if you want to call it a book, but you know, it's some kind of Latin scenario where he wrote these prophecies, right? There's 112 of them, where in these prophecies he pretty much prophesizes every pope from the very beginning to the very end, which I believe the first pope was Celestine II. Again, I'm not quite sure, but I think it was Celestine II, right? The very first pope. And then prophesied all the way to 112th, which happens to be, you can guess what I'm about to say, right? Yep, Pope Francis. So the fact that he kind of got that right is another kind of odd thing to me. I don't believe in prophecies. I find it fascinating, but at the same time, I'm like totally skeptical of you know, things like that. It kind of goes hand in hand with religion as a whole, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Where I'm going with this prophecy of the popes is, so this guy created this book of sorts, wrote 112 prophecies, listed all the, you know, popes at the time. What I find interesting about the last one being Pope Francis was in this book, after Pope Francis, there's only 2 words that are stated in the end. And it basically states Judgment Day, right? Now, also the time frames, they all line up, right? They all line up, but it lines up to 2027, which would be another couple of years away. So if Pope Francis was the last one, what's going to happen in the 2 years' time, right? Where apparently, you know, all kinds of bad things happen in that 2 years. I don't know. I'm just going by what I've heard and what I've read and kind of looked into. You know, what does that mean? What does that represent? Right? And I know that's on the Catholicism side, right? Like, I don't know if Christians believe in that. You know, I don't know if they go and believe in this book of prophecies. But I found it very interesting that Pope Francis was listed as the last one. Now, here's another interesting thing that kind of put this, these pieces together that make me think, okay, well, maybe something there. So the last pope, it doesn't say Pope Francis, actually. The last pope basically says Peter the Roman, which is interesting because Pope Francis, that's not his real name. Pope Francis's real name was Jorge Mario Bergoglio, and coincidentally, his parents were Italian from Rome, right? So essentially, he is Peter the Roman, which I find fascinating. Now I will say in some more of my looking into this, a lot of scholars will tell you that later on in Saint Malachi's prophecies, they get more vague. And this was really only created in the time because they were trying to get another papal elected, right? So that's what the scholars are saying, that these prophecies aren't always accurate. But it is a known fact that a lot of his prophecies on the 112 popes, a lot of them line up to a lot of the key figures that were the popes during those times. I don't know how many it is out of the 112. All I know is I think that's something else. That's something I think is pretty interesting. And, me not being a religious person, to find that there's some substance there, I think, that can be talked about. At least for me anyways. I'm not saying any of this shit is true. Again, I'm just saying this is what I've heard, and I'm asking questions. So if any of my viewers who are listening, who are fascinated by this kind of stuff, and even have answers for me, please tell me. Comment in the in my section, my comment section, so we could talk about it on the next episode. This is mainly just to tell you my thoughts on shit, right? To me, I find it fascinating. Other people, probably say, go kick fucking rocks. Who gives a shit? But, to each their own. I think that's really, really odd. So, as far as breaking it down, my understanding of Catholicism and Christianity, I will break it down in the most simplest of terms, right? Catholicism, they believe in the Pope's authority, right? They believe in the Pope's authority. They believe in saints and rituals and confessions through a priest, right? That's Catholicism. And then also the church interprets the scripture, right? That's my understanding of what Catholicism is. Where Christianity, they actually have a direct relationship with God, right? The Bible is the final authority, and there's no pope, there's no, required priest for confessions. But at the end of the day, they both believe in Jesus, but they go about it in different paths. So that's my understanding between Catholicism and Christianity. And I find it interesting because in Catholicism, with the Pope passing, they go by Judgment Day, whereas Christianity in Revelations basically say end of times, right? Or the end of days. And it's kind of the same thing. Do timelines match up? I don't know. I have no idea. But I think, as far as religion's concerned, it's a real thing. It's a real thing. People have their own beliefs in things, right? As far as I'm concerned, I never grew up with religion. I had some key best friends, which I still talk to this day, who were very active in the Christian church, and they went on, cool little events, and sometimes I would tag along. The times I would tag along, I'm not gonna lie, I had fun. I was hanging out with my buddies, learning stuff, but I could never really kind of grasp on to Christianity, right? To me, I just always felt uncomfortable. I almost felt kind of as a kid, of course, this is freaking weird. People are singing and, looking up to the sky with their hands, and they're giving over their complete faith into something, and I just couldn't understand it, right? And I think part of that is just, me not being active in the scene. Just, it didn't really do anything for me, right? But I know for some people it's a very real thing, and when people seek comfort, a lot of people turn to God. And, I don't blame anybody for that. That's, what, to each their own. I think it's a beautiful thing that people can go someplace or pray to something and give them a sense of hope, a sense of, things will be okay. So whatever you got to do to get that, hey, more power to you. I think that's fantastic. Like I said, I'm more along the lines of, I do believe that we have spirits. We have a spirit inside us. And once it's gone, you die. Right? You die. But I'm starting to think now, where does that spirit go? Where does that go? That's the question I have, right? Like, that reincarnation scenario, I'm really leaning towards that because, like I said, I think a reason to be on the planet, right? We're here for a reason to learn as people, right? We're here to learn shit. And if you die before you learned what you're supposed to learn, whatever that is, then it makes sense to go back again and try it over again. So I believe there's something out there. And I'm open to I'm open to things, I felt, as a kid, and I would throw this at my buddies who went to church. I would always tell them that religion was a form of crowd control, right? I always thought that religion was created at the beginning of man so kings can make their, subordinates listen to them. It's like, okay, I want my people to listen to me, so I'm going to put the fear of God into them. If you think about it, a lot of the wars over the span of time have been over religion, and that's really odd to me. Like, religion's supposed to being about acceptance, peace, and love, and forgiveness, and yet a lot of wars were built around, people's beliefs and religions. It was always that was always my thought process, right? So I don't think that now. Obviously, I'm older and wiser, and I understand people a lot better, and I do believe that there's something out there. I do believe that there's just unexplainable shit happening in everybody's world, and you can't explain it. I don't know. This is where I stand. I believe in being a good person. If you're a good person, good things will happen to you. If you treat people the way you want to be treated, I think there's a natural moral integrity inside most people where you know the difference between right and wrong. You're not just taught that, right? Yeah, I mean, you are taught it, but I think internally, I think people just kind of know. You know the right from wrong. You know when you're doing good deeds or good things in life, and you know when you're doing fucked up shit. And so I would rather just live my life in a good manner. That hasn't always been the case. I've done a lot of fucked up shit in my lifetime. I've hurt a lot of people over my lifetime, and I've done a lot of bad things. Okay? We all make mistakes, and I do think that there is a point where, those can be overlooked for certain things, Again, I spoke about that shit on the last episode, but I think people know generally right from wrong. good from evil. And I believe if you just treat people good, good things will happen. So I don't know. It's one of those weird things. If you have thoughts on this topic, please, I want to know them. Tell me. Like I said, tell me in the comments, and we can talk about this. I'll have you as a guest on the show. To me, I absolutely love having educational discussions. I like learning shit. I'm not the person who says I know everything. I will straight up tell you I don't know shit. I'm 51 years old. I don't know shit. I'm still learning, motherfuckers. I'm still learning shit, But that the religion thing has really got me twisted sometimes too, because organized religion can be really corrupted, and it's sometimes hard to kind of overlook certain things when it comes to that kind of stuff. But it's just people shouldn't be making money on religion, and there's so many people doing it. So I think that there's a point there where it's just like, okay, who's being real, who's not. So that's my thoughts on it. As far as where we're headed as a nation, I think we're headed in a good direction. I think from what I'm hearing, things are looking good. That's all I have to say about that. And that experience I had in the mirror was, it was something that I'm not going to forget it. To this day, it's still kind of, I look back on it, and it's just kind of, I think it was a sign. It just doesn't happen on the daily. So that happened for a reason, and I want to fucking know the answers, damn it. I mean, seriously, that's just, has anything like that happened to any of you guys? And if it has, I want to fucking know, because like I said, part of me thinks that I'm crazy, and I'm not fucking crazy. I mean, I could be a little cray-cray on the bike and shit, but like mental crazy, no, I'm perfectly capable, and I'm very good there. I'm not fucking crazy, so it's not my mind playing tricks on me either. So I don't know. All I know is, if it was a sign, well, I'm fucking listening. Are you? That's the question. That being said, I'm Reelz signing off. Ride safe, live free, and don't take shit from anyone. Peace.